Good afternoon to you. 3:06 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. The breaking news today on Ray Epps coming up in just a moment. We'll talk to Congressman Ben Cline today at 3:30 ahead of Merick Garland's testimony before the House tomorrow. Joe DeGeneva is here, the former U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia. We talked to him at 4:30 as the left is brazenly attempting to meddle with ballots right now and have Donald Trump removed from them nationwide. And then Gabriel Noronha is with us at 5 o'clock from Polaris National Security. We're going to talk about this new Iran deal as Joe Biden hands over untold billions of dollars to the Iranians and a whole lot of bad guys, too. It's all ahead. You can chat with us today at 888-630-9625, 888-630 WMAL. Do you remember this audio?
Tomorrow, we need to go into the Capitol. Into the Capitol. Peacefully. Fed.
That was January 5th, 2021, the day before the incursion at the Capitol, January 6, 2021, when Ray Epps, caught on that tape, was yelling that people needed to go into the Capitol tomorrow. Into the Capitol. The crowd starts chanting, Fed. The following day, here's Ray Epps again.
As soon as President Trump is finished speaking, we are going to the Capitol. It's that direction. That's where our true problems lie. President Trump is done speaking. We are going to the Capitol. That's where our problems are. Okay, folks, we need your help. As soon as President Trump stops speaking, we are going to the Capitol. The Capitol is in that direction. Let people know. Spread the word.
So Ray Epps caught on camera multiple times inciting people to go to and into the Capitol building over the course of those 48 hours. But then what happened? Well, not much. He was listed for a time as one of the people that the FBI wanted in connection with the events of January 6th, but then mysteriously, his name and picture disappeared from the FBI website. That, of course, all added up to people being very skeptical of what it was that Ray Epps was even doing over the course of those 2 days, why he was captured on camera, being one of the only people who was actually inciting an incursion of the Capitol and facing no consequences when you had people who were charged, convicted, and sentenced for very long periods of time. Well, today, an update to this saga, this bizarre saga. Ray Epps, in the words of the New York Times, target of January 6th conspiracy theory, charged in Capitol attack. They say he was charged today with a single count of disorderly conduct for his role in the attack on the Capitol. In a bare-bones charging document filed in federal district court in Washington, prosecutors accused Mr. Epps of disrupting the orderly conduct of government business by entering a restricted area on the Capitol grounds on January 6th. For more on what all of this means, I want to bring in Julie Kelly because no one's followed it more closely. She's the author of Declassified by Julie Kelly Substack and is on the phone now. Julie, good to have you with us as always.
Hey, Vince. Always happy to be on. Thank you.
Okay, so Ray Epps gets a disorderly conduct charge all these years later. I can't help but notice that Enrique Tarrio, a man who was not in Washington, D.C., is now going to be doing 22 years in jail for seditious conspiracy, obstructing Congress, obstructing law enforcement, multiple counts of conspiracy, and also terrorism. They gave him a terrorism enhancement on his sentencing. Do I have that right?
You do. You absolutely do. And not only that, his three co-defendants also were convicted of seditious conspiracy, and Judge Tim Kelly added terror enhancements to their sentences as well. Enrique Tarrio did nothing even close to what Ray Epps did on January 5th and 6th. Yet here he is with not even a slap on the wrist, a slap on the pinky, a slap on his vest. I don't even know what you would prefer this as, but it certainly is not going to make questions and doubt about his involvement and who he was working on behalf of.
Yes.
Certainly not going to make those questions go away.
So I've noticed that lefties in the media today are making it's a very black and white case to them. They think, okay, this demonstrates that he was never working with the federal government in any capacity, that the people chanting Fed at him on January 5th were completely wrong, and that what this is just a guy who was cooperating with law enforcement, and now they're going easy on him because he was so helpful to the federal government. Does that pass the smell test to you?
It doesn't. And keep in mind, too, as you know, Vince, that Ray Epps' photograph has been featured on the FBI's J6 Most Wanted poster. It's pinned to the FBI's social media account. And now that we have more video, and there's more video actually released in the Proud Boys trial that shows Ray Epps' movement on the western side of the Capitol. Ray Epps was involved in the very first exterior breach point. He is the man who whispered in the ear of Ryan Samsel, who then turned his MAGA hat around and helped knock over the first set of bike racks on that side. He jogged up those steps by Peace Circle, joined by Proud Boys and people like Ryan Samsel. He went on the restricted grounds. He was there for an hour and a half. You can see him in other video clips, one that was just released this week by Stephen Horn, the journalist who was convicted on 4 misdemeanors, showing him sort of interfering with law enforcement. How he got away with those charges, not to mention obstruction of an official proceeding, the common felony that more than 300 January 6th defendants face, how he got away with all of that and the slap on the wrist, why? I mean, I can't explain it except that he is an asset in some capacity.
Now, I can't help but constantly make comparisons here to Enrique Tarrio because it seems relevant to me. You know, Enrique Tarrio was the leader of the Proud Boys. And again, serving 22 years in jail now for the events of January 6th. He was not in the United States Capitol. Meanwhile, Ray Epps was actually a chapter president for the Oath Keepers and was in the Capitol encouraging people to go into the Capitol building. And he ends up with 1 count of disorderly conduct. Nothing. As you said, a slap on the pinky. The comparisons here, I think, are really revealing.
They are, and especially considering the conspiracy angle that so many J6ers, including Enrique Tarrio, the Proud Boys, other members of the Oath Keepers face. Why was Ray Epps, who coordinated travel with his son, who was there at that breach point, who whispered in Ryan Samsel's ear, who was near other members of the Proud Boys, who was clearly talking to people, many people on the west side of the grounds? The burden of proof for conspiracy is basically non-existent. The DOJ could have easily made a conspiracy or conspiracy to obstruct case against Ray Epps. They chose not to. The timing of this also is very interesting. Ryan Samsel, the man who Ray Epps whispered in his ear before he knocked over those first bike racks, he has been in custody since January of 2021. The feds have moved him around from prison to prison. He finally is scheduled to go to trial next month. I have no doubt that his defense attorneys are not planning to call Ray Epps as a defense witness and testify under oath what he said to Ryan Samsel. Ryan Samsel told me he changed his story. He said that Ray Epps said to him, "Don't worry, we've got more people coming." Originally, Ray Epps and Ryan Samsel said that Epps said, calm down, these are the police, they're just trying to help us. So Ray Epps would be forced to testify under oath. I'm not sure, Vince, how this 1 count, and I guess he's going to plead guilty to this tomorrow, which is a very, very quick adjudication of this matter, how that will factor into Ryan Samsel's trial. Also, this could be intended to bolster his defamation lawsuit against Fox, saying, hey, look, Tucker Carlson and others lied about me. Here I am, convicted of a misdemeanor, and I pleaded guilty. And, I'm going to go to jail for 14 days or something crazy.
So what you're suggesting is, sorry, just to be clear. So you're suggesting that maybe, the Justice Department, Tucker is not, Tucker is clearly a target of the Biden administration. There was an example of that. Remember, the White House pressured Facebook to censor Tucker's videos on their platform. They actually diminished the ability for people to see his videos on COVID because of White House pressure. So this wouldn't be the first time. Are you suggesting that the Justice Department may have a hand yet again in trying to, build a case against Tucker here?
Of course. And just to make clear, Tucker Carlson is not named as a defendant. It is Fox News. But some of Tucker's segments certainly are included in the defamation lawsuit. But of course, this DOJ is in cahoots with the media and in cahoots probably with Ray Epps and his attorney to help bolster that bogus defamation lawsuit. So that lawsuit's not going anywhere. So we'll see what happens with this plea deal. But more importantly, I'm going to cover what's happening in Ryan Samsel's trial, because that might be the most revelatory in terms of what this low-level single charge is all about.
Interesting. So is this a Matthew Graves prosecution indictment today, this disorderly conduct charge?
Yes, it is. The U.S. Attorney for District of Columbia, Matthew Graves. Yeah.
Okay, so tell me what you think of I've been reading a lot of your coverage of Matthew Graves. Excellent work. And, I don't think people really appreciate who this person is to the extent that they should, because first of all, he is a Biden donor. That's obvious. Anybody could look that up on the Federal Elections Commission. You can see that Matthew Graves donated to Joe Biden's presidential campaign. He was rewarded with a seat as a U.S. attorney now for the District of Columbia. He has used it to go after Joe Biden's political opponents to the tune of thousands of people that he has prosecuted. He brags about that very fact. Also, his household, I don't know how wealthy they are, but his wife has been an important part of Democratic politics for many years. In fact, she runs a left-wing legal organization designed to advance abortions. And simultaneously, I know also courtesy of your reporting, Julie, that she's been a regular visitor at the Biden White House. She's there like all the time. What's going on with this Graves household?
Right. So Matthew Graves is married to a woman named Fatima Goss Graves. She is the president and CEO of the National Women's Law Center, a $100 million nonprofit that promotes any number of radical causes, including unrestricted abortion on demand, LGBTQ rights, and reforming the Supreme Court. She has been one of the key players in trying to remove Clarence Thomas from the Supreme Court. And so, yes, she has been, as I scoured the White House visitor log, she's been there roughly 30 times since her husband was confirmed as U.S. Attorney for D.C. She was just there last week, Vince. They're not even trying to hide it. She was at a round table with key top White House officials talking about economic issues for Black women. And so this is this power couple in Washington, D.C., helping not only to advance the Biden White House agenda, to target Trump supporters and conservatives, but as you know, Matthew Graves is also the U.S. Attorney who declined to bring tax charges against Hunter Biden. That happened in March of 2022. Coincidentally, his wife visited the White House 5 times that month that her husband declined to bring charges against Hunter Biden for his tax crimes in 2014 and 2015.
Yeah, and meanwhile, he's also not prosecuting actual street crime in D.C. 67% of all arrests last year turned down from prosecution by Matthew Graves, the man who's responsible for actually prosecuting those crimes. So he allows D.C. to become more hellish, and he attacks Trump supporters with every waking breath. And it seems like the whole vibe in his household is we've got to destroy our political opponents at all costs.
Yes, and just yesterday announced the conviction of 3 pro-life activists, including 2 women in their 70s. This brings to a total more than a dozen, I believe, pro-life protesters who were involved in events. This dates back to October of 2020.
Yeah.
These charges brought by Matthew Graves, not only have they been convicted by a D.C. jury, they were taken into immediate custody by the Clinton-appointed judge there. They are now languishing in D.C. jail, awaiting final sentencing where they could be sentenced to up to 11 years in prison.
Yeah, look, Republicans are apparently debating our budget right now. If they cared about our country, they would defund a tyrant like Matthew Graves. That would be a good start. Like right away.
Agreed.
Julie Kelly, thank you as always for all of your excellent coverage. I genuinely appreciate our conversations. Thank you. You know, I was talking about all the ways that the Biden administration has turned Tucker Carlson in particular into an enemy worth targeting. They love going after this guy. So whether it's censoring his Facebook communications and censoring his ability to reach people on Facebook, they did that. That's public record now, obvious stuff in the Facebook files. We found out more about that. There's also this allegation, what Julie Kelly suspects here, that the government is kind of offering Ray Epps a sense of a justification for his lawsuit against Fox as he tries to attack them for things that Tucker raised on the air, that, you know, maybe the Biden administration has a hand in trying to help along the lawsuit with Ray Epps here. The other piece, and I had forgotten all about it, I was just reminded of this. Remember when the Biden administration spied on Tucker using the NSA? Do you remember this allegation? The NSA IG has launched an investigation. They launched it back in 2021. We were never told the findings of that investigation. But remember this?
We heard from a whistleblower within the U.S. government who reached out to warn us that the NSA, the National Security Agency, is monitoring our electronic communications and is planning to leak them in an attempt to take this show off the air.
You remember this? And that was all related to the fact that I think at the time Tucker was seeking an interview with Vladimir Putin and trying to actually interview a newsworthy subject. And the Biden administration was looking to exploit that to hurt him, using the NSA to spy on him. He found out from sources who were familiar with all of that. The NSA did launch an Inspector General investigation. The results never made public. So there's that. Let me go to the phones now. We were just talking about this Ray Epps story with Julie Kelly. Let's bring in Chris, who's calling in from Marshall. Now, Chris, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Good afternoon, sir. It's always an honor. And, of course, I'm calling from the front line of the heartland. I just want Ms. Kelly to know that there are a lot of us that consider her a national treasure and an American hero. And she writes very well, which is always helpful.
Yes.
My comment about what's going on is I wonder if I'm old enough to remember when Amnesty International would protest outside of every embassy that held citizens in solitary confinement. I wonder if they still exist or they're like, and how they sleep at night knowing that this is happening in our own country. This is not happening in some foreign, third world, what.
Yes. No, and exactly right. Whether it's Amnesty International or the ACLU, none of these organizations that pretend to stand up for civil liberties and human rights and human decency, they're not standing up for the J6 defendants.
Yes, sir. Entirely crickets. That's all we're hearing from that side.
Yeah, because it's a partisan operation.
Human rights, huh?
Yeah, no, you're right. But it's a partisan operation. These are Democrat organizations. They're captured by that party and its agenda and have no interest fundamentally in defending people in a neutral way. The ACLU once did actually stand for the blanket defense of human rights regardless of viewpoint. Not so anymore, unfortunately. Do you know the ACLU once was publicly against gun registries? They would say, no, we can't let the government keep track of every gun purchase in the country. Have you heard from them much on that lately? No, you haven't. Congressman Ben Cline will be joining us coming up from Virginia's 6th. He is a part of the House Judiciary Committee. He's got some questions for Merick Garland, arriving in Congress tomorrow. Hey, good afternoon to you. It's 3:35 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news coming up today. We'll be joined shortly by Congressman Ben Cline. We'll talk about Merick Garland's testimony tomorrow before the House. Joe DeGeneva is going to be with us at 4:30. Democrats still trying to figure out ways to banish Donald Trump from the ballot. They really don't want voters having a choice in the next election. As they claim that they're protecting the sanctity of our, quote, democracy. And then Gabriel Naronha is with us from Polaris National Security, former State Department advisor on Iran. We'll talk about this new ridiculous Iran deal that Biden has arranged, giving away a lot of money to the Iranians in order to fund their terrorism activities. It's all ahead. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. As we await the congressman, we're going to be, again, talking to Congressman Ben Cline here in a few minutes. I just want to reflect on some audio today because this is crazy. So Zelenskyy, the president of Ukraine, is in the United Nations today giving a speech. He gave a speech today. And during his speech, I kid you not, he made it about climate change. So this is a guy who has untold number of people dying at the hands of the Russians in his own country, who goes to the United Nations, and boy, does he not know how to open up checkbooks. Listen to the way that Zelenskyy talks to these world leaders, who in turn are going to take your money and give it away.
Even though humanity is failing on its climate policy objectives, this means that extreme weather will still impact the normal global life, and some evil state will also weaponize its outcomes. And when people in the streets of New York and other cities of the world went out on climate protest, we all have seen them. And when people in Morocco...
Okay, anyway, he's playing these guys like a fiddle. Is he not? Am I right? He's got them like, he's just He knows what to say. He knows what to say. It's the same reason he's got a transgender spokesman right now telling us in English every day how important it is to support the war in Ukraine, because he knows it's going to open up the checkbooks of American policymakers, of Western policymakers, and they take taxpayer money and send it to Ukraine without any meaningful consideration for the corruption that's going on there. And that includes the fact that, just ahead of this visit, Zelenskyy just fired a bunch of defense people in his own country for corruption to try and, I guess, convince American lawmakers that everything's fine. Anyway, more on that coming up. Meanwhile, as I said, Merick Garland, the Attorney General of the United States, set to testify tomorrow. And among the people who will have an opportunity to question him is my next guest. Congressman Ben Cline from Virginia's 6th Congressional District joins us on the phone now. Congressman, good to have you with us, sir.
Hey, great to be with you, Vince.
All right, Merick Garland finally arriving in Congress after a long stretch of not speaking to you. What do you expect tomorrow?
Well, we do expect a lot of excuses and avoiding direct questions, but we have a lot of questions that demand answers. The American people have a lot of questions that demand answers about the two-tiered system of justice that has been created in this system and in this federal department, and we're going to put him to those questions.
Yes. The U.S. Attorney in Delaware, now the special counsel who's been apparently investigating Hunter Biden forever, made some claims that he throughout all of this was given, just the ability to do whatever he wanted, to pursue Hunter Biden wherever he wanted, all across the country. And of course, that got called into question by the testimony of the IRS whistleblowers who said, no, actually, he wasn't the deciding factor. And it seems that Attorney General Merick Garland appears to have lied to Congress about this, because now all of a sudden David Weiss is a special counsel, suggesting that he didn't actually have these powers in the first place. I assume you're going to drill down on that subject.
Absolutely. There are a lot of us who want to know exactly how much authority Weiss had and whether the Attorney General was being truthful when he said he had complete autonomy to bring the charges that he felt necessary, because that doesn't seem to be the case. It seems as though he was limited. They allowed the statute of limitations to expire on several charges for Hunter Biden, and we want to know who directed that those statutes expire, and whether Weiss was allowed to even attempt to bring charges or not.
And was Garland ever briefed on the sweetheart deal that the Justice Department was about to give Hunter Biden? What hand did Merick Garland play in that? Because, boy, that's about as corrupt as it gets. And given such a high-profile case, you'd think the Attorney General would actually be involved in that decision.
Right. For the one who crafted the sweetheart deal to be appointed the special counsel, you have to suspend all logic to think that was somehow done without the AG's knowledge. For
sure. Merick Garland's tenure has been full of scandal that the left really refuses to acknowledge, whether it's targeting parents as domestic terrorists, targeting Christians by suggesting that there's something radical about Catholics celebrating a Latin Mass, for instance. And what we've seen, this two-tier system of justice, the FBI, the Justice Department, brags that they are prosecuting every person who was in the Capitol on January 6, 2021. Yet, meanwhile, the U.S. Attorney for D.C. is not prosecuting actual street crime. That's his job. He's not doing it. Tell me, what do you make of all of that? And will Merick Garland have any answers for you tomorrow?
Well, he probably won't have answers that satisfy the members on our side of the aisle, but we've seen crime in the district skyrocket. And so much of this is happening right here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, right here in the area. You have the parents in Northern Virginia, as you said, who were targeted for simply speaking up at school board meetings. You had the Catholic memo coming out of the Richmond field office targeting the expression, First Amendment protected expression of religious faith by Catholics. And it turns out that memo, when the redacted version was presented, that it has been duplicated in other places across the country. So this was not just a single incident that was, as Chris Wray said, pulled back as soon as it was issued.
Yeah.
It turns out that the FBI was pursuing it in many other locations.
You know, I'm thinking of other things that Chris Wray has said and Merick Garland, and one of the things that they've undertaken is to downplay, it seems like, left-wing terrorism across the country. Merick Garland, at one point in testimony before Congress, indicated that the reason why the terror attacks on pro-life pregnancy centers are basically going unresolved is because they happen at night. You know, it's like it's too hard to solve a crime if it happens at night, Merick Garland explained to Congress, which is just so ridiculous. Will you ask for an update on the pursuit of this left-wing terrorism?
Absolutely, and you see that juxtaposed against the bragging of the department when it comes to prosecuting elderly women who are simply protesting outside abortion clinics.
Yes.
The idea that they should be given stronger sentences than these actual terrorists who are committing acts of violence against these abortion clinics, against these pro-life clinics, rather. It's simply infuriating and really frustrating for so many Americans who are watching this two-tiered system and want to see some kind of action taken to remedy the situation. That's why on appropriations we are working to target the Department of Justice to say you're not going to get these funds to engage in this two-tiered prosecution system until we see some fairness restored to the department.
Yeah, that's for sure. Do you think anybody in Congress would defund D.C. U.S. Attorney Matthew Graves?
We're studying that. We're seeing whether not only whether defunding is possible, but also whether in the face of what potentially could be a shutdown, whether that type of activity is, along with so many other types of activity, suspended during the shutdown. We're consulting the lawyers on that one.
Right. In other words, is Matthew Graves an essential employee of the federal government, or can we put him on ice during a shutdown?
Right. That's something that we're exploring and trying to get answers to as well.
Okay. What on that topic, do you expect a shutdown, or will there be some sort of short-term continuing resolution to keep the government running while you continue negotiations?
Well, we hope to avoid a shutdown. We would love to see these appropriations bills, most of which have passed out of Appropriations Committee, move on the floor. But we are still in negotiations with leadership because we want to start our negotiations with the Senate and the administration from the most conservative position possible. Yeah. That's just basic negotiation strategy. And some would like to go ahead and pre-negotiate and go ahead and adopt House bills that are halfway to the Senate. Well, we've seen that story before. We give away the store before the bill is even passed in the House, and then when you go to the Senate, you negotiate for even higher levels of spending, and that's why we have $33 trillion of debt and deficits of over $1 trillion a year.
I've heard from Republican members that there is no chance that all 12 of the appropriations bills will be done by October 1st. Do you agree with that? Well,
I think it would be hard. I think we would have to work all night, and there are too many of my colleagues who aren't interested in that. Yeah. And that's a disappointment, and it's a disservice to the American people because they pay their taxes, they work hard, they expect their government to do their work and get it done on time. And that's something that we've campaigned on. And for us to be in control in the House and not be able to get our appropriations bills done, it doesn't speak well to the job that we should be doing. We should be doing a better job.
And the more unified the Republican conference is on these questions, and the more they get this work done early, the more it forces Democrats to be on their heels, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely. If we get these bills, cleaned out of all the woke and weaponized government, and we're funding things like our soldiers, and we're funding our veterans, and we're funding the border security. Let's see the Democrats vote no on those things.
Right.
They talk a good talk, but if they want to campaign on open borders and not funding our military, then that's their they're in for a rude awakening from the American people who do support those things.
Meanwhile, the impeachment inquiry of President Biden is set to begin next week, Thursday, September 28th. What do you make of this, and what will that yield, do you believe?
Well, the three committees of jurisdiction that are investigating right now are going to continue to investigate. There's not going to be a special new select committee. They just have new powers, and the powers are designed to get the information that has been stonewalled by the administration, the bank records of the president, for example, to show that when Hunter Biden says in a text, I have to give half of my income to Pops, well, let's get proof of that. And just like any local prosecutor, and I was a local prosecutor, you've got to go and subpoena the bank records to get those documents. These new powers, these impeachment powers, will enable us to get those documents.
Yeah, which are essential. So when you hear the media say that there is no evidence of Biden's involvement in his family's business dealings, what do you say?
Well, first of all, there's plenty of evidence. There's testimony from whistleblowers. There are some bank records. There are texts. There are all kinds of records already there. But the evidence that connects a lot of that has been denied by the administration. So getting that evidence is something that everybody should want.
Yes.
Whether you support the president or not, you should want the truth to come out, and that's and not be hidden from the public. That's all we're asking.
Yep, I agree. Congressman Ben Cline from Virginia, thank you as always, sir. It's nice to talk to you today. You know, it really goes to show you, Zelenskyy must, I'm going to go back to that audio now that I was playing before Ben Cline got here. Zelenskyy must realize what suckers our political figures are. He knows for a fact that these guys are morons, and he's playing them like a fiddle. He's got the transgender spokesman, an American, who represents the Ukrainian military and says we need to hunt people down who don't buy the Ukrainian talking points and destroy them. And it's just on and on and on. And this is to convince politicians, okay, just keep opening the checkbooks without any accountability. And it's not even, and as always with Washington, it's our money. It's not their money they're giving away. It's our money that they're giving away. And so Zelenskyy today before the United Nations says, the real problem is climate change. Can you imagine? If your country was under attack, if your house was under attack, if your town, your community, your people, the idea that you would engage in some frivolous luxury debate about something like climate change, global warming, or like transgender bathrooms, the last thing in the world you'd be talking about is that kind of decadent horse crap. But here's Zelenskyy today because he knows that the West is going to fall for it. Listen.
Even though humanity is failing on its climate policy objectives, this means that extreme weather will still impact the normal global life, and some evil state will also weaponize its outcomes.
If you went to people suffering under some, totalitarian regime in Africa, or if you went to Hong Kong and talked to the protesters fighting for democracy there, any of these people, and you said, hey, what is your feeling? Man on the street interview. What is your feeling on transgender bathrooms? Do you think they would even seriously consider the answer to that question? What are you talking about? What does that have to do with me and my survival and my freedom? But again, it's a ploy.
And when people in the streets of New York and other cities of the world went out on climate protest, we all have seen them. And when people in Morocco and Libya and other countries die as a result of natural disasters.
Okay. And one of the things, I've been thinking about Zelenskyy too, in the sense that, how does he know these people so well? How can he use, ridiculous talking points like this and successfully get all this cash? And the answer, I think, is built into the fact that, remember, he's an actor and a comedian. That's his career prior to politics. And one of the key features of comedy is to have keen observational abilities, the ability to sort through other humans and figure out what makes them tick, what makes them interested, what makes them laugh, what makes them cry. And he's got these guys pinned down. He took his career as a comedian, as an actor, and he's employing it really well. He has keen insights into what motivates these people. He can act in front of them in order to trigger their responses. He can go up and stand in front of the green marble wall at the United Nations and say, the real problem is climate change. And the money just starts flowing. Your money starts flowing. 358.